Hi, everyone. Welcome to WFC Plus. Kara Sundlin here in the streaming center. And I want to bring you up to date on what's happening in Iran right now. President Trump did just make a comment that he would offer immunity to any of the Iranian fighters if they quit fighting. Of course, we are following up. The president gave his first talk today, speaking publicly for the first time on air about the strikes that the United States and Israel took together in this coordinated action against Iran. And so we want to give you some context. And to do that, I would like to bring in. One of our local experts here, and we've got Kenneth Gray here from the University of New Haven, who is an expert in a leader and lecturer in Homeland Security, criminal justice, and emergency management at the Henry C. Lee College of Criminal Justice and Forensic Sciences. So, Ken, thank you so much for being with us. I know this has been a difficult time for many Americans as this all happened so quickly and wondering what we should feel about it. So thank you for taking the time to help us really understand what's at stake here.
Hi, Kara. Good to be with you.
Yeah, I know this has been your business for a long time, but let me ask you this. What went through your mind the second you heard we struck Iran?
So the president had made representations to the protesters in Iran some time ago that we would have their back. And
Yes.
so I have been anticipating this attack for some time now and had been somewhat disconcerted over the fact that there was negotiations going on with the Iranian members of their government talking about trying to work a deal to come to agreement over their production of enriched uranium and ballistic missiles. That deal, trying to get them to agree to stopping to try to enrich uranium and stop production of ballistic missiles, that fell through. So the president then went ahead and started the attack in conjunction with the Israeli government to try to remove their capability of making nuclear weapons, remove their capability of making ballistic weapons, but additionally to provide support for the Iranian protesters, who many of which have died over the last couple of weeks in trying to overthrow the regime. The president said, "We've started this now. It's up to you to conduct the regime change. We can't do that, but we have started this for you."
Yeah, I want to just play for a moment what President Trump said earlier, just a couple of hours ago, when he spoke to the nation through a news conference for the first time about these strikes. Let's hear from the president, and then I want to hear from you about what your thoughts are.
Our objectives are clear. First, we're destroying Iran's missile capabilities, and you see that happening on an hourly basis, and their capacity to produce brand new ones, and pretty good ones they make. Second, we're annihilating their Navy. We've knocked out already 10 ships. They're at the bottom of the sea. Third, we're ensuring that the world's #1 sponsor of terror can never obtain a nuclear weapon. Never going to have a nuclear weapon. I said that from the beginning. They're never going to have a nuclear weapon. They were on the road to getting one legitimately through a deal that was signed foolishly by our country. And finally, we're ensuring that the Iranian regime cannot continue to arm, fund, and direct terrorist armies outside of their borders.
All right. So as we're listening to the president there, speaking here with Ken Gray, who's an expert on Homeland Security and U.S. response here to what's happening in Iran. What's your take on what the president said? Break that down if there's any meaning we need to understand here.
Sure. Just as I got finished explaining, the primary concerns for the United States is nuclear weapons, the enrichment of uranium to weapon grade, and the production of nuclear weapons capabilities. That had been attacked by the United States back in June of last year, along with Israel. We thought that the facilities at Natanz and Esfahan and elsewhere had been completely destroyed. It appeared that they were in the process of trying to dig out and get some of those facilities back online. So that was one of the primary goals. It was to wipe out that capability yet again. And ballistic missiles, Israel is particularly concerned about the production of ballistic missiles. But over and above that, all of Europe should be concerned because they were manufacturing ballistic missiles that had longer range capabilities and could reach anywhere in Europe if they had continued to produce those. So the president outlined those two. He also then talked about the support of all the proxy groups that Iran has been utilizing, proxy groups in Hamas, proxy groups in Hezbollah, proxy groups in the Houthis, proxy groups in Syria. The president wanted to make sure that they stopped being able to run the proxies to conduct operations in support of Iran's attempt to export their revolution to other areas. The part that he did not address, of course, was the regime change. The regime change is part of the reason why we did this operation, but our primary concerns are the ones that he laid out. Regime change is something that he made promises to the Iranian people that were protesters there, many of which lost their lives. Maybe upwards of 40,000 lost their lives fighting for regime change. But now it's up to them to carry that battle forward to affect that. You cannot do regime change from the air. It takes people on the ground to actually make that happen.
Okay, so that raises a big concern here because the president did say what we learned from that news conference that I thought was interesting was when they started asking about time frame. Over the weekend, we heard the president say, "Oh, maybe we'll just be done in a couple of days, or we're even ahead of schedule." Then we learned today that they're 4 to 5 weeks was what they're planning, and that they're ahead of schedule because they were able to kill Iran's supreme leader. Then he later said that he wouldn't rule out troops on the ground. Does that mean, from your perspective, you do see U.S. troops on the ground in Iran?
So it depends upon how much we want to support regime change. We can do the things that the president laid out: destruction of the nuclear facilities, the destruction of the ballistic missile facilities. Those are things that can be done from the air, and things that had been done before, but now they're finished it with this latest attack. As far as the mullahs, the clerics there that are the next in line, 40 of them were taken out in the initial day. They did not expect to have the opportunity to take out so much of their depth of potential future leaders in the event of the death of the Ayatollah. And so that all happened early. So that's why he said a day or two as opposed to a couple of weeks. But I think that real estimates of 4 to 5 weeks is more likely, and even longer if we decide that regime change is the real goal of this operation. Israel has not signed off on regime change as their primary mission. The United States has not signed off on regime change as their primary mission. If that is the primary mission, then that might cause this to become a much longer war than just 4 to 5 weeks. And it might also additionally require boots on the ground. The thing to keep in mind is that Iran is not only striking out against Israel and not only defending against the United States, they are also attacking facilities in the countries surrounding Iran. And so there have been rockets, drones launched against the UAE, against Bahrain, against other facilities in the Middle East there. And so Iran is reaching out and hitting all of the partners of the United States. They hit oil refineries in Saudi Arabia. So what was only supposed to be a war inside Iran, it now looks like the possibility of becoming a regional conflict.
Okay. So, Ken, as we sit there and speak about what we need to understand as Americans, what is the next step? And one thought is it's wonderful to see these Iranian people who were being murdered by their government celebrating in the streets. We've seen Iranians here in America also all over social media, those who fled fled Iran, after the revolution in the late 1970s, they're crying, they're feeling good that this is finally happening. But as far as what happens next, because it seems that with the CIA intelligence, we were very successful in getting this certain group of people. But we also, someone brought this up earlier, that we were managed to kill Osama bin Laden, but we didn't knock out Al Qaeda. So as we do this, is this really a pivotal moment where we're going to see the world change on its axis, or is there just another group of terrorists waiting to rise up?
So there is no group that exists in Iran that we can turn to and have them take over the government and take over the government in a fashion that we would be happy with. What is more likely is that some existing group like the Iranian army, there is the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which is like an army, but it is focused in on protecting the Shia Islamic revolution. And then there is the normal army that they have there, the Artash. And it might be some group like Antash that could rise up and take over Iran and be able to be a force that we could negotiate with and have them be the ones who have the government. Or perhaps the police forces that are there could rise up and take over the government and we could deal with them. But as far as the IRGC says they will not negotiate with the U.S. government. So if there is not somebody to turn to next, it is not possible for the Iranian protesters to be able to put together a government without having some structure in place. They're looking to bring in Reza Pahlavi to come in, the son of the Shah, to come in and put together a government. But I don't know if they really have the capability of doing that because they don't have a force backing them on the ground to provide the security for them to do that. The question, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, so what do you see happening next, at least in the short term? Certainly the president has said, Iranians, take over, make your country free. Is that something that is legitimately that could happen? Or what do you see next?
So I think that if the Iranians who are protesters against the government want to affect that revolution, if they want to have regime change, that they need to rise up, become armed, and defeat the IRGC. And I don't know if they are ready and willing to do that. 40,000 may have died so far, but I think that to defeat the IRGC, a lot more will need to die. And I don't know if they have the capability of doing that. I don't know if we are willing to go in there and provide arms and training to them. That's something that would take a lot longer than 5 weeks to be able to put together an insurgency capable of taking over the government. So I think more likely we're going to try to find some existing group like the Iranian military, like the Iranian police services, to be able to take over that role. And that may freeze out the possibility of a regime change. Again, it's up to the Iranian people to affect the revolution there, to take over the reins of government and replace the current government with their own. It's not something that can be done from the outside, utilizing the outside forces.
Yeah, I'm speaking with Ken Gray, professor of Homeland Security and Practices at the University of New Haven. Deep background here in what's going on, so we can understand with what we're seeing play out in Iran and how long we're going to be there, and if you have children in the military, what this could mean for them. It seems to me that you were not surprised that the president acted in this way, even though a lot of people were. And he did say he'd have the protesters back. So is it your belief that the president was always planning this and we're just finding out about it, but the minute he said, I've got the protesters back, these plans went into place?
So I think that what is probably a better characteristic of this way to characterize this is that the United States and Israel have been planning to revisit the nuclear facilities, revisit the ballistic missile facilities, and that was our primary mission. But at the same time, the president made these representations to the protesters that we would have their back to stay in the street, protest against the government, and that we would come in and assist them. And we have done so, but it is up to them to effect regime change. And the president said that on the first day. We've given you the opportunity. If you really want regime change, you need to be out in the street and doing this. But then he did follow up and said, stay in your houses right now because there's going to be a lot of bombs dropping. But when the opportunity comes up, you're going to need to affect the regime change. I'm just not sure they have the game plan in place to be able to do that. It might mean the death of a lot more Iranian protesters to be able to affect a real revolution there in Iran. The Iranian Revolution that occurred back 47 years ago, happened because of the coincidence of the Shah leaving the country, the Shah being protested against by a lot of people, and an opportunity for the Ayatollah to come in to take over at that time. But there was a lot of people that were already in place ready to affect that to happen. I don't know if they have that structure in place to make it happen this time.
Okay. So, what about what comes next with Russia and China? Is that a big concern for us and just the whole? I think regular folks are worried. Are we approaching World War III and what happens next? So, how do Russia and China play into this?
So China depends very heavily upon the oil production of Iran. And so if Iran is not able to provide oil to China, China will be hurt that way. By the way, that means that to me, I'm not sure why Karg Island has not already been hit. It should be very high up on their targeting list. The Iranian oil production facility is at a place called Karg Island. That's where the tankers come in and get fueled up and then depart Iran for their destination. And China is a country that relies heavily upon oil coming out of Iran. So they will be hurt by this. The Russia, on the other hand, is a seller of oil, but they want to provide weapon systems to Iran. They are continuing to offer weapon systems to Iran, and so they will be likely sending supplies, sending systems into Iran, which I would think that the United States would be trying to block them from being able to provide further assistance to Iran. But they are both major players that may affect what is going on. Additionally, the world's economy is going to be affected by this because the Iranians have shut down the strait there, which has a lot of oil flowing through it, but a lot of other goods flowing both in and out of the Middle East.
And as far as what we're noticing here, we've already seen oil prices open higher today. What are Americans going to notice? I want to talk about sleeper terror cells in this country in a moment, but what about our pocketbooks? What are we going to notice with perhaps our gas prices or our home heating oil?
Well, the United States has plenty of oil reserves here, and so it is not going to impact us that much. Whenever there's any major crisis going on, the oil prices reflect that. And so this temporary bump in the prices of gas is due to the ongoing conflict right now. But we don't rely upon Iranian oil here in the United States. So it should not affect our oil prices here. But as far as the rest of our economy goes, if this is a short-term conflict that is going on, it should not impact us as far as goods being shipped to the United States. But you saw that with the fight going on there in Israel with the Gaza Strip, that the Houthis totally shut down shipments through the Sinai, the strait there, and so through the Sinai Canal. And so goods had to go all the way down and around Africa to get up to Europe and to get to the United States. So there was an impact on the economy that way. It caused for at least a month-long delay in shipments around Africa.
So, as we go forward, are you concerned about these sleeper terror cells and people? We've lived through 9/11. Are we concerned right now? We had that incident in Austin, Texas, where there was a shooting and they found a Quran in the car, and he had a T-shirt that might have indicated property of Allah. Are you concerned about our safety here in America?
So there are three different threat groups that I'm concerned with. Number one are sleeper cells. Iranian members of the IRGC who have come to the United States to live here in the United States and then at some point get activated and carry out some act of terrorism as a sapper unit here behind enemy lines, so to speak. That is, that they will carry out acts of terrorism here to support the IRGC back home. And how many of those are here in the United States is unknown, some of which have come here decades ago and may very well be so entrenched inside the American society that they will refuse to activate. But others that have come here more recently will likely activate and carry out the instructions of going out and attacking soft targets all around the United States. So, depending on how many there are, this could be a major impact on the U.S. economy and also on the safety of Americans everywhere. The second group is that of Al Qaeda affiliated groups that had supposedly been coming into the United States here, planning to carry out another 9/11 type event, and that they may see this as an opportunity for them to do so. And so, Joe Kent, the head of the Counterterrorism Center, under the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, when he was testifying before Congress, he said that there were 18,000 suspected and known terrorists here in the United States that had come through into the country, and an unknown number that have come illegally into the country that we don't know who they are or where they are. So there is a potential for these terrorists to also get active here in the United States to carry out attacks, not unlike the attacks that occurred in Paris by the ISIS groups that attacked the restaurants, the Bataclan, and the soccer stadium there. A small group was able of 11 attackers were able to bring Paris just about to a standstill and killed a lot of people in their attacks. Imagine that times 20 or 30 all around the country, and you can understand the amount of mayhem that would be created by that. The third group, though, is the one that we probably should be most concerned about, and that is the lone wolf threat. That is
Okay.
individuals who are motivated by what they see going on over there by the United States against Iran, who decide to act on their own. They're not supported by the IRGC. They're not supported by Iran. They weren't given money or training, but they see this going on and they want to do something to help the IRGC, to help Iran, and they decide to carry out an act on their own. They're usually not on the radar screen of law enforcement before they act. And so the first time you become aware of them is when they carry out an act. And that's what the guy in Austin, Texas was yesterday. He was a person that when and the FBI has not characterized yet him as a lone wolf. That's me calling him a lone wolf.
That's your
But he had a
interpretation.
Quran in his car. He had a sweatshirt on that said property of Allah. He had a T-shirt on that had the Iranian flag underneath his sweatshirt, and he carried out this act. And he is what the Bureau would now call a violent extremist for religious purposes, for radical Islam. And so when they call him that, when they finally come to that conclusion, he will fall into the category of lone wolf. And there may be many other people out there who decide to act on their own because they see what's happening and they want to strike out against the United States.
Which is just terrifying, as we look at the video here. And I think the other question I want to ask you, and I'm aware of time that we have less than 5 minutes left, and we could probably spend hours on all of this before our next program, Great Day Connecticut, starts. But as I speak with you, Ken, and you're so knowledgeable about what's going on behind the scenes, is this really about preventing Iran from getting a nuclear weapon? And the reason I ask that is certainly that's what Congress is asking. And that is certainly what the president has said. We can't have a nuclear weapon. But we heard maybe some months ago that we really set Iran back, and they really didn't have any opportunity. They put them back years from making a nuclear weapon. So is this about that or something else?
So immediately after an attack, you do a bomb data assessment. You determine how badly the bombed area was affected. But that bomb data assessment does not always tell you, or battle damage assessment does not always give you information right up front as to how much damage you did. So I think that following the attacks back in June, that the BDA, the bomb data assessment information, may have not been 100% correct. That is, they may not have totally taken out their capabilities, and that the Iranians seem to be getting close to be able to recover enough uranium to enrich to make 1 or 2 nuclear weapons. And once they had 1 or 2 nuclear weapons, they were likely to use it maybe against Israel. So I think that this really is because of the desire to make sure that that does not happen is the reason why we carried out this attack. But keep in mind that we have been in war with Iran at a very low level since the Iranian Revolution occurred 47 years ago. Mm-hmm. That is, they are continually attacking American interests. They've attacked American servicemen who have been stationed overseas. They have been attacking our allies through their proxy network. And so the Iranians have been at war with us, even though we may not have been in an active war with them for 47 years.
Does this change this? Is this going to change the world as we know it if we continue and are successful with the president's goals of continuing? I mean, apparently we certainly decapitated the leadership. But as far as what comes next, do you foresee the world's axis really changing?
Well, I don't have a crystal ball, so I can't tell you for sure. But I can tell you that one possibility is that there is a regime change, that the Iranian people become a democracy, or perhaps have a monarch there with the return of Reza Shah there, Reza Pahlavi, the king of Iran, at least holding rule over Iran as they transition to some other form of government. In the event that that happens, then the entire proxy army that is out there attacking the allies goes away, and the possibility of peace would suddenly reign across the Middle East. That's one very rosy outcome. But the other possibility is that we may end up signing an agreement with the IRGC or the army of Iran, and then who knows what the outcome will be.
There are Americans who think that these strikes were just done for the purpose of a distraction from things here at home, like the Epstein files and the economy and poor poll numbers. From your perspective of looking at this and what you know in 30 seconds or less, would you agree with that, or you think this was valid?
Well, politics is behind everything. But that being said, I think this was about the real world threat of Iran obtaining nuclear weapons, or Iran obtaining ballistic missiles capable of striking against Europe, or maybe even the United States. Yeah. And so I think that this action so far has removed that as a threat.
Ken Gray from the University of New Haven, speaking on the implications of military strikes in Iran. Thank you so much for being with us, sir. We appreciate your knowledge. And for now, everyone on WSB Plus, we're going to send you over to Great Day Connecticut, which is starting right now.
WFSB Plus.
Grab your Roku voice remote and say it to see.